The night before the wedding, I accidentally came across Burton's phone. He'd sent a video of me limping on crutches to a group chat. Every time I see her hobbling like that, I feel like puking. If I'd known I'd be spending my life with someone like her, I'd have rather been the one who lost a limb. I wish I could call off the wedding. In the next instant, I was transported back to the car accident. As Burton had hoped, this time I didn't save him. Instead, he ended up with a broken leg and lost his sight. While Burton was showering, his phone buzzed non-stop. The moment I picked it up, a message flashed on the screen. Just go out drinking, get totally smashed, and the wedding won't even happen tomorrow. Or just disappear for a month. Her parents won't blame you after all you've done for Hazel these past 3 years. You don't have to waste your whole life on her. Just give her family some money if needed. Or fake amnesia. I stood there, frozen, my hands trembling. I couldn't believe it, the man I'd loved for 10 years, while I was anxiously looking forward to our wedding, was planning his escape. With each chat I scrolled through, my heart sank deeper. Burton. Every time I see her hobbling like that, I feel like puking. If I'd known I'd be with someone I didn't love, I'd have rather been the one to lose a limb. If it weren't for her family's company being worth something, I'd never have put up with this for so long. Every line oozed with disgust for me. He'd even shared the video of me using crutches in the group chat with his friends. In that video, my left leg was empty below the knee, amputated after the accident 3 years ago. When the crash happened, I didn't hesitate to shield Burton, taking most of the impact myself. That's how I lost my leg. I was a dancer, and I lost my leg. I fell into despair, spiraling into depression. But I remember Burton's eyes filled with concern back then. He'd hold me gently, patiently helping me practice, whispering his promises in my ear, "Don't give up. I'll always be here for you. If you can't walk again, I'll be your legs for life." Yet the chat messages felt like a slap across the face. The videos he'd taken to encourage me had become their jokes behind my back. The sight of me trying to walk was pure comedy in his eyes. As I was struggling to hold back tears, Burton came in. "Hazel, what's wrong?" Seeing my tear-streaked face, his voice turned anxious. He kissed my forehead gently. "Are you nervous about tomorrow's wedding? My dear, are you having pre-wedding jitters?" I silently turned my head, biting my lip. Seeing me pull away, Burton instinctively reached to hold me. But when he glanced at the phone screen, his face went pale. He snatched the phone, panic flooding his eyes. I forced myself to stay calm, though I was shaking. When I demanded answers, he couldn't get a word out. Finally, he dropped the act and revealed his true face. Gone was his fake kindness as he shouted at me. "You don't understand. Do you know what these 3 years have been like for me? At every gathering, others bring their beautiful girlfriends, but me, I'm always the one with no one. People talk behind my back because my girlfriend's a cripple. I want to enjoy life like a normal person too." Each word from Burton was like a dagger, stabbing deeper, wounding me to the core. The look in his eyes was filled with pity and contempt. It was as if the affection he'd shown me was nothing but charity. "If I could, I'd wish you'd never saved me." My nails dug into my palms, trying to mask the pain. A burning numbness clouded my mind, my ears ringing, everything fading into silence. The next second, my surroundings changed. It wasn't the apartment Burton and I had shared for 3 years. I was back in the car, in the back seat, on the day we returned to college for our graduation certificates. A loud crash echoed. A car turning left collided with a speeding tanker. Our car was rear-ended, slamming my back into the seat. But this time, as Burton had wished, I didn't leap forward to protect him. In my last moment before losing consciousness, I saw Burton trapped in his seat. I had a long dream. In my dream, I had a prosthetic leg. I walked in a white wedding dress, up the aisle, waiting for my prince. But in the next second, the screen that should have shown my memories with Burton instead played my darkest moments, when I'd been crying and breaking down. People pointed and whispered as my groom took another woman's hand. He smiled and said, "Hazel, I'm sorry, but I can't spend my life with someone I don't love. I can give you money, but I can't keep taking care of you. The only one I've ever loved is Rosalie." I was left alone at the altar, with everyone watching me with pity. I felt like a clown abandoned by the world, filled with a hatred I'd never known before. Stumbling like a madwoman, the scene shifted, and I was on the rooftop of the hotel. My white dress billowed in the wind, like a butterfly spreading its wings. The only sound I heard was my mother's desperate scream. When I woke up in the hospital, Burton was in the emergency room. For a moment, I was stunned, unable to believe I'd really come back. I'd thought it was only a dream. But I pinched the flesh on my left leg, and the pain was real. A rush of joy filled me, and I burst into tears. My mother hugged me, her warm tears soaking into my clothes. "Hazel, you nearly scared me to death." I could hear her voice tremble, a relief after a brush with tragedy. But it's a shame about Burton. I remembered how my mother had held back tears at my wedding in the previous life, how she'd held back amidst the chaos and sobbing at the ceremony. Everything felt like a lifetime ago. How lucky I was to get a second chance. Ignoring the pain, I limped to the emergency room's door, where I heard his family's desperate cries. "No. He can't lose his leg. Burton's too proud, how will he handle this?" It was his mother's voice, sobbing uncontrollably. But no matter how much his family pleaded, the doctor shook his head. "His bone is shattered, and there's a blood clot in his brain. If we don't operate now, we might miss the best chance to save him." In the end, Burton lost his leg. But he fared worse than I had. His left leg was amputated from the hip. And the doctor warned that due to the blood clot, he might lose his sight too. For the next 2 days, I often visited Burton. The man in the hospital bed was pale and motionless, no longer the proud, arrogant Burton I once knew. I sat silently by his bedside, determined to be there when he woke up, ignoring my own injuries. To others, it must have seemed like I was deeply in love with him. Even his mother urged me to go home and rest. I shook my head stubbornly, squeezing out a few tears. "I'm fine. I want to be here when he wakes up. I don't want him to be sad." But really, I just wanted to see him wake up, to finally tell him myself, "You look utterly disgusting as a cripple." The golden boy of his family, what would he think, now that he'd lost his leg and possibly his sight? Finally, on the 5th day, Burton woke up. As soon as I walked in, I saw the chaos all over the floor. It was certainly Burton's doing. A caregiver was cleaning up the broken pieces on the ground. Burton's mother looked worried, her eyes red and swollen as if she had just cried. Although Burton had just woken up and was weak, he still had the strength to get angry. It seemed he hadn't completely broken down yet. I had underestimated him. Burton lay dazed on the bed, his eyes empty, like a lifeless doll. Just as the doctor had said, Burton had lost his sight due to the pressure from a blood clot in his brain. But it was only temporary. Once his condition stabilized and the clot was removed, he'd be able to see again. Burton's mother pointed to his leg, then shook her head at me. It dawned on me that Burton had no idea he'd lost his leg. But there was no way I would grant him the chance to know. Of course, I pretended not to notice. I walked quickly to Burton's side and held his hand tightly, crying uncontrollably. "Burton. Stay strong. We can still get a prosthetic leg and do everything we love, like horse riding and racing." I knew Burton would break down, but I didn't expect him to lose it so intensely. He suddenly gripped my hand tightly, his voice strained. "What did you say? Say that again." I was taken aback, but I couldn't break free. Holding back the pain in my hand, I continued to comfort him. "Burton, if you want to cry, just let it out. I'll stay with you through everything." Burton, like a madman, tore out the needle from his hand and struggled to reach for his leg. But his hand met empty space. He froze for a moment, then his whole body began to shake. He roared, pounding hard on his right leg, the veins bulging in his hand. Burton's mother rushed forward, crying, to stop him, but he pushed her away with one strong swing. The room fell silent except for his anguished scream, "Get out! All of you, get out!" After a long while, Burton seemed to tire. He released his hand, his expression despairing, his voice choked, like a trapped animal. I stood to the side, sneering through my tears. But I wasn't grieving for Burton. It was as if I were seeing myself in the past. In my previous life, when I first learned that I'd lost a leg, I'd felt the same kind of despair. I had trained in ballet for 18 years. Even my teacher said I was born to be the brightest star on stage. But then, I lost my leg, and my dreams were shattered. I will never forget those darkest days. I locked myself in my room all day, refusing to see anyone, just wanting to hide in a corner where no one could find me. Everything touched my raw nerves. I couldn't help but self-harm, even thought about ending it all. It was Burton who broke down the locked door and carried me out of the pool of blood. He held me close, gently kissing my cheek, saying, "Hazel, I'm so sorry. I failed to protect you. If you need to blame someone, blame me, but please don't hurt yourself." Burton convinced my parents to let me stay at his apartment, promising them he'd take care of me for life. But in the end, it was all just a scheme. After our engagement, Burton used my family's company resources to expand his business empire rapidly, overtaking my family's company in just 3 short years. He even sabotaged our company in a land bid, both overtly and covertly suppressing us. I remember my mother hinting about it a few times. But back then, I depended on Burton too much to notice what he was plotting. It wasn't until I saw those messages with my own eyes that I realized how wrong I had been. As I looked at Burton's devastated face on the bed, a thought took root in my mind. Since I was reborn, I would return every bit of suffering he caused me. If he didn't want me, then I'd stay by his side just to spite him. I'd make him rely on me, fall in love with me, and once he couldn't live without me, I'd drop him straight into hell. So I leaned in and held the sobbing Burton close. Under his mother's shocked gaze, I promised, word by word, "Burton, don't be afraid. I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. Even if you've lost a leg, I'll still stay by your side." And with that, I took it upon myself to care for Burton. Every day, without fail, I went to his apartment. In the eyes of those around us, my love for Burton had reached its peak. Even Burton thought so. After all, who could bear to tie their future to someone with a disability? When my mom found out I had volunteered to care for Burton, she almost locked me up. She looked at me, filled with confusion. "I know you like him, but his accident has nothing to do with you. Why sacrifice your life for this?" I remembered Burton's cold question to me. "Hazel, go ask your parents, ask them what they did to force me." I don't know what my parents did to make Burton compromise. No matter how much he resented it. He still suppressed his disgust and took care of me for 3 years. But there would never be an answer to this question now. Only after I reassured her of my clarity did my mom finally relent. Just like me back then, Burton became irritable after the amputation. Because he couldn't see, he grew more sensitive and paranoid. He complained about the caregiver's footsteps being too loud, or the cook's food being awful. He went through several caregivers in just half a month. He smashed the things on his bedside table countless times. No one could calm Burton down, except me. Because I understood Burton's pride. I knew what he needed, knew his most sensitive points. When he pursed his lips without thinking, I'd bring him a cup of hot water. When he tossed and turned, I'd help him to the bathroom. Burton didn't like the cook's food, but he enjoyed the soups I made. No one knew how many times I had made soup for Burton in those 3 years in my previous life. I knew his taste preferences better than anyone. Within a month, all the servants and caregivers had been chased out by Burton. After that, I was the only one allowed in his room. Sometimes, Burton would look lost and say, "Hazel, you're so good to me, but Hazel, someone like me doesn't deserve you. You really don't have to." I knew Burton had started to depend on me. But it still wasn't enough for me. I gently placed my finger on his lips, my voice soft and soothing. "I understand, I just feel for you. As long as you get better, nothing else matters to me." Burton said nothing, but there was a touch more tenderness in his eyes. With my attentive care, Burton's temper gradually improved. The frequency of him breaking things decreased significantly. Burton was obviously relying on me more and more, but I knew he hadn't truly fallen for me. Because deep down, he still held on to his ideal woman. As his health improved, the blood clot in Burton's brain could finally be removed. His family brought in the nation's top surgeons for his operation. The surgery was a huge success. On the day the bandages were removed, Burton was visibly elated, constantly glancing toward the door. I knew who he was waiting for. After countless glances, a figure in white finally appeared. Jenny was a renowned dancer at University A and also my roommate. Many called us the 2 flowers of the dance department. We were graceful, our skills exceptional. In sophomore year, Burton practically fell in love with Jenny at first sight. Since then, whenever he came to see me, it was actually for Jenny. I had loved Burton for 10 years, so of course I was hurt. But Burton never turned me down, nor did he give me a clear answer. I knew I had lost completely and quietly withdrew. But somehow, they never ended up together. I didn't even envy Jenny, until, just before the wedding, I found their chat history on Burton's phone. "Burton, I've missed you so much these past 3 years. Me too. I regret not accepting you when you liked me. Now I realize the only person I truly love is you. Burton, if I come back and crash your wedding, will you leave with me?" "I will." Every day since my rebirth, I feel a wave of nausea whenever I recall those words. I wanted to see for myself if Jenny, who had the nerve to disrupt a wedding in my past life, would still love Burton now. Just then, as Jenny looked at Burton, eyes brimming with sympathy, I stepped in with a fresh set of medical supplies. "Burton, it's time to change your bandages." The flirtatious air abruptly froze, and the room seemed to tense up. I hesitated for a moment, awkwardly standing by the door. "Am I interrupting?" "The doctor did say his bandages need to be changed at this hour." "No problem, Hazel. Give it to me, I'll take care of Burton." Jenny responded, taking the supplies from my hands, ready to tend to Burton herself. Seeing Jenny step forward eagerly, I was thrilled. I was hoping she'd catch a glimpse of this. As Jenny carefully peeled back the gauze on Burton's leg, she visibly flinched. Burton's left leg was amputated above the knee. The stump was still healing, scarred and raw, looking unsettlingly jagged and swollen. With a loud clang, the bottle Jenny held slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. She stumbled backward half a step, her face frozen in a look of horror. The tension in the room spiked again, so quiet that we could each hear the others breathing. "Burton. I'm so sorry, Jenny stammered, her voice shaking. "I didn't mean to." Hurt and disappointment clouded Burton's gaze. "I'll leave you two to talk," I said, slipping out of the room, uninterested in their drama. From outside, I could hear Burton's raspy voice questioning her. "Are you really that afraid of me? Am I that terrifying to you?" "Burton. I swear I didn't mean to," Jenny replied, her words trembling, on the verge of tears. Not long after, I heard the sound of something being thrown. I smirked. Burton's anger had flared up again. But aside from smashing things, he seemed incapable of much else. Then came his furious yell. "Get out. Get as far away as possible, and don't ever come back. I don't want to see you again." Jenny ran out of the room, sobbing, giving me a hard glare as she passed, but not sparing me another look. The flowers she'd brought Burton came flying out the door, barely missing my face. I smiled slightly to myself. So much for true love, it falls apart in the face of hardship. Because of Jenny's reaction, Burton's already fragile mood crumbled further. His fits of anger grew worse, smashing things, and even lashing out verbally. One day, when he threw his phone yet again, I saw the faintest hint of impatience on his mother's face. And who could blame her? The Shin family didn't only have Burton as a son. His father had only visited him once since the accident, clearly having written him off. His mother, meanwhile, was constantly stressed, dealing with outside affairs, company matters, and Burton's unpredictable outbursts. Even she stopped coming to see him daily, now only visiting every few days. Burton must have noticed her change, because his fits of rage only became more frequent. Whenever he was in one of these fits, I would quietly stand behind the door, watching. He refused to let anyone near, so the servants wouldn't dare approach. When he yelled for water, I pretended not to hear. Once he'd shouted himself hoarse, boiling with anger, I'd slip in and say softly, "Burton, I'm sorry. I was cooking soup and didn't hear you call for me. I'll be faster next time. Please don't be angry, it's bad for your health." In his rage, he would glare at me, and I'd turn away, wiping away a tear as if wounded. "If you truly hate me that much, I can leave." Panic flickered across Burton's face, and he clutched my hand, suddenly vulnerable and desperate. "Hazel, don't go. You're all I have left." And just like that, time passed, and I knew, Burton was now completely reliant on me. As Burton's health gradually improved, I achieved my goal of being accepted into the City Ballet Company. After 3 years, I finally stood on the familiar stage once again, overwhelmed with emotion. To the rhythm of the music, I pointed my toes, extended my shoulders, and danced like a butterfly in flight. Raising my arms, I felt like I could reach out and touch the stars. Each jump, each spin filled me with an endless surge of energy. Thanks to my performance, the director nominated me for a ballet competition. To practice, I visited Burton's apartment less frequently. The housekeeper called me several times before I finally made time to go. The moment I stepped inside, she sighed with relief. "Miss Hazel, thank goodness you're here. He's been having another tantrum, and we just can't calm him down." The instant I entered, Burton's expression hardened. His first words were accusatory. "What have you been so busy with? Why haven't you come to see me?" I raised an eyebrow. The proud Burton was just as helpless as ever. I flashed him a smile and happily said, "Before graduation, I applied to the City Ballet Company. I got in, and the director even nominated me for the competition." Ignoring his deepening scowl, I continued with excitement. "That's enough," he snapped, his tone cutting. Feigning surprise, I covered my mouth, as if I'd let something slip. I looked down at his empty left leg, murmuring in an apologetic tone, "Burton, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to." I hesitated before saying, "I was just so happy. I've been so focused on dance that I neglected you. After the competition, I promise." Before I could finish, Burton slammed his fist on the table. "You're just flaunting your working legs to mock me, aren't you?" His voice dripped with bitterness. I staggered back, startled, as he whispered coldly to himself, "Even you see me as a cripple." Seeing his fury, I thought about the time he'd ridiculed me, saying, "Hazel limping around is like a sad little clown. How do I keep myself from laughing out loud?" Now, here he was, the pitiful clown in his own tragic play. From that day on, Burton became increasingly clingy, fearful of my absence. He'd call me countless times daily. Busy with rehearsals, I often ignored him, prompting a string of messages. "Hazel, will you visit me today? Hazel, I want your rib soup. The housekeeper's cooking just doesn't taste the same." I didn't respond and just silenced my phone. "A friend from the dance troupe teased, got into a fight with your boyfriend?" I laughed and shook my head. "Not a boyfriend, just someone who's clingy and desperate for attention." I suddenly realized that the tactic of playing hot and cold worked really well on Burton. With the rejection from his childhood crush and abandonment by his parents, Burton had become a castaway that no one wanted. And it was clear that I'd become his most important emotional anchor. Seeing him constantly anxious yet deeply reliant on me, I knew my plan had succeeded. All I had to do was mention leaving, and he'd go crazy trying to keep me. Ah, men. It's always what they can't have that they want most. But honestly, it's satisfying to keep Burton hanging and hurt him once in a while. Burton's birthday was approaching. Since his accident, he'd been avoiding people, even his childhood friends. A week beforehand, I reached out to his friends and helped arrange a big surprise for him. On the morning of his birthday, his friends arrived early, bringing a huge bouquet of flowers. His closest buddy even showed up with a limited edition sports car, hoping to give Burton a surprise. As they entered, Burton was practicing walking with a cane. "Burton, look what we brought you. The newest model, a supercar." The moment our eyes met, I could see the shock in everyone's gaze. It seemed the news hadn't spread yet that Burton, the company heir, was now disabled. They stammered, "Burton, you." Burton's face turned pale, his expression filled with embarrassment and discomfort. Who would have thought that the golden boy Burton would end up like this? Because of the car accident, the last thing Burton could stand to hear about now was cars. And now his old racing buddies were here, pouring salt in his wounds. His fists clenched, veins bulging across his hands. Seeing the car keys in their hands, he practically roared, "Who told you to come? Who told you to come? Get out." Just like that, what should have been a nice birthday party was ruined. I escorted Burton's friends out, apologizing, "Please don't take it personally. Burton just can't accept things yet." They nodded in understanding, then left with regret written all over their faces. Back inside, I met Burton's dark, stormy gaze. Through gritted teeth, he asked me, "Hazel, did you do this on purpose? Did you deliberately make them come here to laugh at me?" I looked down at him, neither agreeing nor denying it. In a flash, his expression shifted to deep sorrow. He looked at me, almost pleadingly. "Why would you do this to me? I was ready to spend my life with you. I love you so much." I couldn't help but laugh. Back when I needed his love the most, he found me repulsive. After every moment of intimacy, he'd vent in his group chat. Disgusting, I can't stand touching her. When can this finally be over? And now he's the one with a crippled leg, saying he's ready to spend his life with me? Saying he loves me? Please, such cheap love, I don't need it. Now it's my turn to feel disgusted by him. So I recited the words I'd prepared, one line at a time. Guys, seriously, every time I see her limping around, I feel like puking. If I'd known I'd spend my life with someone I don't love, I would have rather been the one to lose a leg. I just want to run away from this marriage. Watching Burton's increasingly confused expression, I took a step closer, leaning down to whisper in his ear with a smile. So, does it hurt being trampled on? Because in our last life, you did this to me. How could you, a cripple, expect me to be devoted to you? Burton seemed to recall something, clutching his head in agony. The pain was so intense that he fell to the ground, rolling in misery, cold sweat beading across his forehead. I looked on, indifferent, feeling a deep satisfaction. No one knew how many nightmares I'd endured since coming back. In those dreams, Burton pretended to love me deeply, only to cruelly push me into darkness behind my back. Night after night, I'd wake up in terror, unable to shake the horror. I feared that my rebirth was just a dream, that I'd wake up as the Hazel abandoned at the altar. My gaze fixed on his crippled leg, I spat out mockingly, "Burton, you look so pathetic with just one leg." Finally, Burton, lying on the floor, completely broke down. He glared at me, eyes bloodshot, growling lowly. He looked so pitiful. I left him behind, turned, and walked out the door. Behind me, I could hear his desperate pleas, "Hazel, don't go, please." My relationship with Burton was completely severed. I no longer had to keep going to his apartment. I could finally focus on preparing for the ballet competition. A few days later, news spread throughout our circle that Burton was now disabled. His mother did call a few times, each time pleading for me to visit Burton. I refused, but Burton's mother wouldn't give up. "Hazel, please, just visit Burton. He won't listen to anyone else. You're the only one who can ease his mind. Think of all I've done for you over the years. Just take a moment to visit him in the hospital." After hanging up, I found it ironic. After all I'd done to Burton, he still wanted me to visit him? Isn't he afraid I'll just say something else to hurt him? To focus on my preparations, I decided to ignore the calls altogether. I trained tirelessly, day in and day out, pouring everything I had into my practice. Only I knew how much effort I'd put in. That stage. I'd dreamed of it for 3 years. Every move was executed with elegance, and my leaps and spins moved the audience to tears. Finally, I had the chance to stand on that stage again, and I wouldn't waste it. On competition day, I won by a landslide. The applause thundered in my ears, ringing with such force that I felt overwhelmed. Standing on that stage, I teared up, my eyes brimming. For that moment, I forgot my resentment, forgot my pain. I was simply the brightest swan on the stage. It felt like a massive weight had been lifted from my heart. After the competition ended, I got a call from Burton. His voice was gentle, with a hint of a smile. "Congratulations." "Thanks." In a daze, I heard Burton take a deep breath. "I remember everything now. I know I wronged you, toyed with your feelings. It's only right for you to hate me, but I never wanted you to die." I tilted my head, watching the neon lights flicker, not replying. "Hazel, beyond the hate, do you have even a little bit of—" "No." I cut him off firmly. Some things were doomed to be irreparable from the start. The other end of the line was silent for a moment. Finally, I heard him say, "I see." The next time I saw Burton was in a hospital hallway. Burton, in a wheelchair, looked pale and exhausted. The vibrant young man had withered into an old soul. The nurse caring for him mentioned he'd refused treatment, and the injuries from the car accident had worsened. Since Burton was now disabled, his father's illegitimate son had been openly welcomed into the family and had taken over the company. Burton's mother was hospitalized from anger, and their family was in turmoil. Yet Burton seemed uninterested in fighting back. Day after day, he stayed in his apartment, staring blankly at the begonias in his garden. When our eyes met, he froze. Hope shone briefly in his eyes. "Hazel. Are you here to see me?" But just as quickly, he laughed at himself. Of course not. You hate me. He looked at me cautiously. Hazel, if there were a next life, would you forgive me? I smiled calmly. Burton, it's all in the past. I don't hate you anymore. But I also don't want to forgive you. As I finished, the light in his eyes faded and turned dull. Even though I no longer hated him, I could never forget the anger I'd felt when I learned the truth. I could let go of the hate, but I'd never forgive him. The last time I heard news of Burton was the news of his death. He'd taken his life in the early hours of the morning in his private apartment at Begonia Bay. A bouquet of bright begonias lay beside him. Begonias were my favorite flowers. In our previous life, to make me happy, Burton had filled the garden with them. Maybe, in those days, he did genuinely care for me. A gentle breeze drifted in through the window, stirring my heart. In a fleeting moment, I saw that boy I'd once truly loved. After I won an award, he'd bring me a bouquet. We'd celebrate all night with food and fun. When I struggled with grades, he'd pull me into the library for tutoring. When he was so mad that he couldn't even speak, he would helplessly but lovingly tap my forehead. I would also push through the crowd, foolishly hugging his backpack, just to watch him play basketball. Then, as the sunset bathed the sky in its last glow, we would ride our bikes home together. Back then, I thought we'd be like that forever. But I didn't know how cruel reality could be, leaving us shattered. It wasn't until much later that I learned the meaning of the crabapple flower. A bitter longing, a hopeless love. Just like what I had with Burton. When I loved him, he couldn't care less. By the time he finally turned around, I no longer wanted to look back. End.